So, hey, Paul, welcome to the show.
Hey,
Um,
thanks, Martin, for having me.
if you could tell our audience a bit about yourself and why I've asked you to come on the show.
Well, I'm a chiropractor right here in Ottawa. I practice out on Maryville Road, and I've been a chiropractor now since 2003. So I'm in year number 11, or actually moving into year number 12, if I'm doing the math right. And before I was a chiropractor, I have an unusual background that I was an RN before I was a chiropractor, so a registered nurse. And before that, I was a paramedic. So it's been an odd journey for me to get from where I started in my career to where I am now.
Okay. And so I've asked you specifically because you've had some challenges related to your health. I don't know, what is it, like 4 or 5 years ago?
It's been 3.5 years. It was Good Friday in 2011. And, just imagine just getting up on a Friday morning. Everything is great. It was perfect weather. It was, in fact, my wife and my children had left town, or they were busy doing something where I really felt free in that I had this whole day to myself.
Mhm.
And got up, felt great, and I went about my day. And in the span of about 15 minutes, I went from feeling great to really feeling rotten. And I'll fast forward a little bit. I was actually learning how to fly airplanes at the time, to be a private pilot, and I was in the airplane flying alone because that's the stage I was at. When suddenly I started to feel really not very good, and because 15 minutes earlier, part of your checklist before you take off in an airplane is, "Am I okay?" So is the airplane okay, and then am I okay? And everything was awesome, and I was flying little circuits, so touch and goes they're called. And about 15 minutes into the flight, I started to feel really unwell. And so I decided to scrap the flight. I landed, and by the time I lifted the canopy on the airplane, I took my headset off. I was completely deaf, or almost completely deaf, I should say, in my left ear. And that quickly progressed so that about 48 hours later, 2 days or 2.5 days later, I was on flat on my back in a hospital in an emergency room, with what turned the doctors had done a lumbar puncture, and the diagnosis was confirmed that I had bacterial meningitis.
Okay, so I remember when I had to take my meningitis vaccine back in, I think it was maybe high school or something like that, a long time ago.
Yeah.
Is bacterial meningitis serious?
Well, yes. So I've met a few survivors of viral meningitis. There's two types of meningitis. One is viral, one is bacterial.
Okay.
And there are far more survivors of viral meningitis than there are bacterial. Bacterial is fatal in most cases, and that's the one that I had. And in fact, my wife was being prepared by the physician, saying, this is really not good, because at this point now, not only was I deaf in my left ear, but I had visual disturbances. Visual disturbance, my goodness, I was practically blind at the time. Massive pain in my head. I was starting to have heart palpitations. My kidneys were starting to show signs of failure. So I was on the verge of sepsis. And at that point, usually the disease has so much momentum behind it that the odds of survival are less than 10%. If I'm not mistaken, the number that was quoted to me was 6% chance of survival. And so, yes, it's serious.
Okay. And so you're in the hospital, you got 6%,
Yep.
and somehow you're still here.
Somehow.
How did that happen?
Well, there's a couple of things. First, I got to give credit where credit is due, and that the physicians at the hospital, they did everything right. They did a surgery. They found out where the root of the infection was. They removed a mass from my skull that was pressing onto my brainstem,
Wow.
and pumped me full of antibiotics. And I'm not one to choose antibiotics unless I really need to, but this is one of those circumstances where we got to recognize how powerful medicine can be. So there was that. There was also, I really believe that it just wasn't my time to go. God had a plan, and my number was not up.
Yeah.
And thirdly, I was being adjusted every day in the hospital, much to the chagrin of the physicians that were there. I was being adjusted in the hospital, and Actually, there's a side story to this. I won't take up too much time talking about it, but I had a patient who had just started care in my office, and the short version of her story is that she had just started care, and she happened to work on the floor where I was admitted. And she later had told me, it was a year later after I'd, more or less fully recovered. She told me, she says, I saw you survive when other people don't. And you were being adjusted by your chiropractor every day in the hospital. She goes, I never forgot that. So I think those are the three reasons why I survived given such poor odds.
Okay, so obviously you don't go from, recovering just like that. It probably took. Were you in the hospital for months and months and?
No, it was a 7 day. It was a 7 day stay, which is pretty remarkable. Given how far down I had gone the rabbit hole there, and how close I came to death, to be in the hospital for only 7 days,
Wow.
my turnaround was quick. The recovery, so saving my life being saved was very rapid, and discharge was very quick. But the reality is, in 7 days of being in the hospital, I lost something like 25 pounds of muscle mass. I could still not see out of one eye or not see properly. Incredible vertigo, incredible pain. I had neuropathy, so that means I had electrical pains in my arms, my hands, and my feet. So I was far from recovered. And
so, what did the doctor like? You're being sent back home 7 days later. You can't see. You're in total pain. Everything's like. What did they say? Like, where do you go next?
What were my instructions?
What were your options?
There were none. So, and when you really think about it, I don't want to criticize medicine per se. They did where they showed their brilliance was in saving my life, and I saw that as a paramedic too. When you're circling the drain and you're almost dead, I mean, you don't want an acupuncturist, you don't want a chiropractor, you don't want a naturopath. That's where medicine is brilliant. But when my life was saved, I had a heck of a long journey in front of me. And literally they said, well, we're glad you're alive, follow up with me in 6 weeks. And, they basically told me my prognosis for recovery was pretty grim. And so I was left to my own devices.
So what is the first thing you seeked out?
Well, there's a number of things, actually. I actually got some advice from the most unusual place. My family doctor, he's an MD, but he was originally trained as a chiropractor. He practices both. He practices both models. Yeah, practices both models, and so I just went in to see him just because I was still on antibiotics and wanted to let him know what was going on from a medical point of view. And the first thing he did is he put his pencil down, and he said, "There's no more drugs. There's no more surgeries. There's no therapy for you. The first thing you got to do is if you want to recover from this and increase your odds, and this is the first step, and I stand behind this, and that is you have to guard your sleep cycle religiously." So when I asked him what he meant by that, he said, sleep is a force multiplier. That's the word he used. Sleep is a force multiplier. So that means that if you are sleep deprived, whatever ails you is going to get that much worse. So if you're listening and you've got, whether it's neck pain or back pain or menstrual problems or Crohn's disease or IBS, if you add sleep deprivation to that, whatever it is, whatever ailment is in you is going to get that much worse, that much faster. Sleep is a force multiplier. So the opposite is also true. If you are trying to recover from something, if you get adequate sleep, then your chances of recovery are multiplied. So that was the first step.
How was your sleep at that time?
Well, in reflection at the time when he said that, I knew that was one of the reasons why I got as sick as I did, because I had a nagging shoulder injury before falling ill. I was nagging shoulder injury. I couldn't sleep well. I had a crappy mattress. Wow. And there were multiple factors. This wasn't the only one, but it certainly was a force multiplier. I was more and more sleep deprived. And I look at pictures of myself just prior to my illness. And in fact, the patient who I talked about who was working on the floor where I was admitted, she told me she almost quit care with me before I got sick because she noticed how I went from looking really healthy to I had these dark circles under my eyes. So it didn't happen out of nowhere. I got sick because I was sick. Meningitis didn't just come up and hit me in the head.
There were multiple factors.
There were multiple factors,
Yeah.
and sleep deprivation is one of them. So that's the first thing I did is regulate and guard
So how did
my
you
sleep
regulate
cycle.
your sleep?
So I chose what are the, what time do I need to go to bed and what time do I need to wake up? And I know historically, and there's all kinds of conversation about how much sleep is really needed. For me, when I feel my best, when I get a full 7.5 to 8 hours sleep. And so basically I had to change my priorities, change what I thought was important, and make sleep be more important than whatever TV show I like to watch at night. Because I knew I had to get up at a certain hour. And so that meant count back from 8 hours. And that's what time I go to bed.
Okay. And when you were in bed, were you able to just fall asleep? And
At first, no, because I was in this habit of, staying up till 11 o'clock at night.
right.
But what I hung on to, what I anchored was what time I had to get up. So what time I get up, I know it's going to sound crazy, but at the time I didn't have the schedule in mind. But what time I get up now is I get up every morning at 4:30 because I start seeing patients at 7. So it means I'm in the office at 6:30. And, I have to get up at 4:30 to do everything I want to do to prepare for the day. So I count back 8 hours, and that's the time I go to bed. So if I force myself to get up, so if you're listening going, I can't do that. Well, you force yourself to get up for at whatever time that is. You will be, and if you don't have naps, you will fall asleep at the right time when it's time. It takes a little bit of training, but your body will adapt quickly, and the benefit is there.
I guess you also really believed in that, and this was so important for you to recover, and
Listen,
and you took it very seriously.
Listen, I mean, unless you've got an amazing investment portfolio and you've got investment properties or rental income that is paying for your lifestyle, your number one asset is not you. It's not your bank account. It's not your savings account. It's your physical ability to draw an income. So if you lose your health, you can't work, and if you can't work, you don't earn an income, and so
you have a family, right?
Pardon me.
You have a family?
Yeah, I've got 2 kids, and I'm happily married, and I'm the breadwinner, and so in that moment, see, I knew all of this beforehand. I knew all of this beforehand before I ever got ill, but it really got real for me when I was in that scenario. It always happens to somebody else. It's somebody else who gets cancer. No, you know what? In that case, it was me. And so I was forced. I was not inspired to do these things. I didn't do it out of inspiration. I did it out of desperation.
Okay. So sleep, super key.
Yep.
If you had to pick a team of professionals, if you had to pick maybe 1 or 2 people that you could go and see that could help you in your path of recovery, what kind of professionals would you be speaking to? Or what kind of professionals did you talk to?
Did I? Yeah. That's a great question, because medically, the only thing that was offered to me was a little bit of physiotherapy to rehab my facial muscles, right? Because I had a lot of paralysis on one side of my face. That was the only thing offered, because there is nothing else. So I had to really be creative, and thankfully, because I'm already a chiropractor, I'm more aware than, say, the average person from the general public of what else is available to me. Mm-hmm. So I did a number of things. In terms of choosing professionals, I'm biased. Chiropractic is awesome. I'm a chiropractor, so what I continued to get adjusted on a regular basis, because what I was doing for myself and seeing a chiropractor wasn't so much to try and rehab my spine as it was to take pressure off my nervous system, which had been so badly damaged during meningitis. My brain and spinal cord were being crushed. And so that's what chiropractic was for me. And it helped tremendously in terms of resolving a lot of the pain in my arms, the electrical pains, and stabilizing a lot of things. I also consulted with an acupuncturist, Mr. Martin, and I knew you through your, of course, because of Emily. Emily's a chiropractor, your wife, mm-hmm. And a lot of my neuropathy, the pain in my arms and legs, had resolved on its own, but I had some neuropathy in my foot that had not resolved, and the ongoing chiropractic care and all the other changes I was seeing didn't quite seem to be reaching that pain that I was having in my foot. I always felt like there was a golf ball in my shoe, which, if you can imagine, is pretty painful. And so that's when I went to see acupuncture, and went to see you, Martin, and that's when you described to me the principle of acupuncture, which is really very similar to chiropractic in many ways, except you talk more about blood flow.
Yeah.
And that was a huge improvement for me in terms of my overall recovery. But since then, I mean, we're 3.5 years since, 3.5, almost 4 years actually. Come to think of it, it was in April of 2011. I've done a lot of different things because it was a brain injury, and 4 years later, I'm still not clear of all my symptoms. So I've used optometry in terms of rehabilitating my eyes to get rid of, help me with vertigo. Sought out someone to help me with my jaw, my temporomandibular joint, which, when that's not functioning well, has a huge impact on balance. So I really had to be very creative in who to consult.
Okay. So like in anything, it's probably not just, I'm always looking what's the best consultant, what's the best professional, and probably in most cases there's never just one. It's multiple.
It is
help from others. And
well, and to be honest, it changed my perspective on practice too. I hate admitting this, but I'm going to admit it. It's true. Before this experience, I mean, a lot of positive things came from this experience, and in some ways, it's one of the best things that ever came across my path. But one of the things that changed, that before meningitis, I would hesitate to co-manage a patient with anybody else. Like I would be more hesitant to send a patient to a physiotherapist for a shoulder issue. I can fix it. I can do it all. I didn't want to lose the patient.
Yep.
Just really silly, and I hate to admit that was my reality. But having gone through my own journey, I see the value in co-managing people when we can. And so I don't know where I was going with this, other than to say a team approach. Yeah, that's what I was responding to. That is many times the best thing. You just got to find somebody who's willing to do that.
Okay. So I guess my last question to end our interview.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us one thing that you're best right now?
What am I best at right now? You know what? I think that's a good question. I think what I find most important, I mean, as a chiropractor, I'm a doctor, and doctor really means teacher. And if I have a gifting in any area, it would be in my ability to communicate. And I had an experience driving through my community just a couple of weeks ago where, I'm driving through this community and I realize, all the lights are out and everybody's asleep. I'm driving through and I'm going to my office, and how many people are in these homes right now that have had a similar experience, maybe not meningitis, maybe it was cancer, maybe it was a heart attack, maybe it was, who knows, and they're relying entirely on the medical system to help them with their rehabilitation, get them back and get them, have some of their life restored. And they have no idea that acupuncture could help. They have no idea that a naturopath would be able to make a huge difference. They have no clue that a chiropractor can do it. So I think what is part of my passion right now that I think I'm a little more serious about doing is getting in front of people. So you're asking me, what am I best at? I'm best at teaching. I'm best at communicating. To get this message out there, particularly because of what happened to me. It's so important that people are even exposed to people like you, Martin, and other complementary or alternative care, alternative to medicine, that is.
Okay, so if I can just kind of say this. So basically, one of the things you're best at is teaching and speaking. Yeah. And I know this already, but so you have you'd love to go and speak to groups and speak to conferences and speak to businesses people, right? Yeah, church groups, any people. Businesses, anyone who wants to hear how they can actually improve their lives without depending on pills. So how can they find out more about you? Okay, that's a good question. if you're going to go and speak to these people, right? Sure, yeah. So I do a couple of different. They're more popular seminars that I give or conferences. Some of them are as short as 10 minutes. Depending on the type of group that it is.
I've spoken to teachers, teachers groups, church groups. So the talks can range anywhere between 10 minutes and an hour. I've even done these extreme makeovers over several weeks. It's a bigger project, but so topics like how to live to 100 and not regret it. That's a little bit tongue in cheek, right? Women's health, stress busters, building better bones. These are all different topics, but you can go to www.mynepean chiropractor. So I'm on Maryvale, so officially it's not Ottawa. Well, I guess it is Ottawa, but everybody says it's Nepean. So it's mynepeanchiropractor.com, and there's a way you can leave an email. There's some links there under contact us where you can send a message and just say, hey, you heard me on the show and you'd like to talk to me about coming in and doing a talk somewhere. And I don't charge for this. It's a community service. I'm pretty passionate about making sure people know what is available.
Perfect. So throughout this time, so you've been recovering for about 3.5 years, and you're doing much better now. But
sure.
From the beginning, have you had moments where you've wanted to kind of quit this whole health business and just give up and just go back to your regular self?
That is a great question, Martin. Many, many times.
How about this week?
How about this week? No, I'd have to say not.
Okay.
But there have been many times where I didn't see progress. I didn't feel like I was getting better. And then to be honest, it turns into a bit of a pity party. You're like, oh, I'm not getting better, and Martin can't help me, or my chiropractor's not helping, and get lost in a bag of chips and a Coke just for comfort food or something stupid like that. I've done that many times. This has not been a heroic story in terms of I never fell. If you're recovering from something right now, one of the concepts, the only thing that's going to make you feel better instantly is going to be some kind of pill or narcotic. And that is very fleeting. It's a false sense of improvement. The reality is it takes time to heal. And we got to trust in that process. That's one of the things I learned, is to not only trust in the professional that's helping me, right? You got to trust that the person, if you're seeing Martin, for example, or you're seeing me or Dr. Emily or whoever it is you're going to, you got to start from a starting point that they have a good heart and what they want to do is help you, and that they've got some experience. They know. And that's something that I learned big time, is that healing takes time. It took time for me to get sick. I didn't get sick overnight. It seemed like it did, but in reality, I was sick, and then I got sicker with meningitis. And so for how long did my body wear down before I got ill? And so it takes a long time to heal also. And I wanted to quit many, many times.
So when you do kind of have like mini quits, and you're eating your chips and that Coke, and you're just like, oh, forget it. How do you get out of that?
You know what, for me, that's a good question too. For me, it's that's a moving target. I have to anchor to a reason why. So a recent one for me that gets me working out more often than I do is because I suck out at working out and getting stronger sometimes in terms of exercise. And I had a moment with my daughter earlier this week. You need a big why. You need a reason. So I had a moment with my daughter earlier this week where she's 11 years old. She's stressed out about the assignments that are coming through school, and I was laying down beside her to tuck her in at night, and I had to have this whole conversation with her and coach her and teach her and be her dad and lead her. And the reality is, I want to be present. I want to be here to be able to do that. I want to be alive when she's 20. I want to be alive when she's 30 and 40. And to be able to still be a wise owl, and to be able to do what it is I need to do. I want to be present for my wife. I've got another daughter. So, but in that moment, that got very real for me, how important my role is in my family. But if I don't take care of myself, I'm not going to be around to do it. And so that's what gets me out of my pity parties, is I'm reminded, or I have a big why. I got a big reason why I got to do this.
So you revisit your why.
Got to revisit your why. When you have a why, you got to journal it, write it down, and revisit it. Got to refresh your mind every day.
What if you don't have a why?
Then if you don't have a why, then that's a problem.
Because I've done things, and when it gets tough, a lot of times I ask myself why, and I don't have the answer.
that's another habit that I developed more in depth in these last 3.5 years, and that is spending time reflecting on where I'm going. Because we got two options. We can wake up in the morning, roll out of bed, have breakfast automatically, have your coffee, get dressed, roll into your car, go to work, get there, do your thing, come home, eat something, watch TV, zone out, go to bed, and then just go through this motion. Then poof, all of a sudden it's 2016 and nothing has changed. And I call that the worker bee. You just go out and buzz and buzz, 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 but you actually don't go anywhere. And, when's the last time that, you sat down for just an hour? And as soon as I finish this interview, for example, my wife and I are going out. We go to this coffee shop here in Stittsville, and we sit down and we spend an hour together as a couple. We plan things out. Like, what do we want to achieve? What do we want to do in this next year? Who do we want to be, first of all, before we do and we have? So, and we just let our thoughts go. And then at first it was very tricky. We didn't know what the heck we were doing with this. It was like, well, we went out for a tea. We didn't really work very productive. But then it starts to take place where things start to come out, and we journal and we talk between the two of us. And now, boom, there's a plan. And now the why it is you're going to do things start to emerge. But it's a process. It doesn't come out, boom, automatically.
Okay, so if you don't know your why, just go to a coffee shop, hang out there, bring a piece of paper and a pen, and just
think crazy dreams. What would you like to do in the next year?
But no, I do believe in dreams. I do think that we need to constantly revisit our dreams. That's why I have personally, like, my board. I have like a dream board where I put pictures of all my dreams, and that board is something that I looked at all the time. So that's a bit how I revisit my why. It's just by looking at that, and it's very visual. That's how I am. It's not so much with words, it's more with pictures, and that's what I do. But
I have a short story to tell you about this. And I went skiing with my daughter just on the weekend. It was just the two of us, and then in the car, here's the awesome part about this rubs off on your children. She's in the passenger seat, I'm driving, and she says, "Dad," she goes, what are your goals in life?"
Okay.
And the way she phrased it, she was expecting an answer about like houses and vacation and things, something like that, right? I didn't realize she was asking me in those terms. She said, "What are your goals in life?" So I had to pause, and I said, poor thing, gosh, she's 11 years old and she's definitely a daddy's girl, but I said, "My goal in life is that when I leave this planet, and when it's time for me to go, that I know that you're prepared, that I've helped raise you and train you and prepare you for life, and if I can do that, then I think I'll be at peace if I have to leave." And I added to that a little bit. Well, poor thing, she wasn't expecting that. She starts bawling her eyes out because at the thought of Daddy not being around anymore. But the cool thing was, then we followed up and we had a conversation, and so it led to me asking her, "What are your dreams?" And she had a whole list of dreams that she wanted to communicate to me, which is fantastic. Now she's got goals, and now we're slowly working without making it too much of a thing. We're stepping it out and seeing if she can achieve the things at 11, which is phenomenal. I never thought like that when I was 11, or I did, but I forgot how.
I think you did. I think most kids are innately dreamers.
Yeah, you're right.
I think that we
gets beaten out of us.
As we get older, we start thinking about reality or being realistic. But I think kids are huge dreamers, and I remember when I was a kid, one of the best advice that I got was, and I've heard that from Will Smith, you got to protect your dream.
Yeah.
And I remember that when I was a kid, I'll never forget it. Someone told me that there will be a time as you get older, you will stop dreaming, or people will try to get you to stop dreaming.
For sure.
And I was told, whatever you do, don't buy into that. Don't believe it. Stay as a dreamer and keep going. And it's paid off. I'm still a dreamer. You talk to anybody around me, I'm a huge dreamer. And I am going to continue to dream and protect it for as long as I'm around.
And dreamer has a negative connotation when it's used, depending on how it's used. You're not only you're a dreamer, Martin, but you're an action taker, and that is all the difference. Like if you have dreams and wish, and you don't take any action, it's a delusion. You're kidding yourself. But you're very good at also actioning and taking steps. And sometimes the steps are going to be tiny.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have to be massive steps, but that's That's how you build a practice. That's how you learn how to fly. That's how you change your body. That's how you regain your health.
Yep.
That's a great way to end this.
Okay, so just to recap, it's been Paul Groulx, an amazing chiropractor. He went through just an amazing story 3.5 years ago, bacterial meningitis. Actually had to happen while he was flying. He picked the right spot to do it.
Yeah.
And he's in the hospital, 6%. You're not going to make it, but for somehow he makes it. 7 days later, he's back home, doesn't have a clue what to do next. But he goes to his family doctor. His doctor says, well...
Who's also a chiropractor.
Who's also a chiropractor. He says, well,
Yeah.
you should, for one, protect your sleep. Do whatever you can to make sure you go to bed on time and wake up and get the quality sleep you need.
That was my first step.
That was your first step. And then number 2, you started seeking out some professionals like myself.
Yep.
Other chiropractors. You've done tons of things. It's been a team effort. And you are who you are now because of all of that. So congrats. Keep on living the dream. I love you. And
Thanks, buddy.
We'll talk soon.
See you, man.
Bye. All right. If you like what you just saw, you should
subscribe.
Like us.
Any?
Share.
Share and follow and all the rest of the social stuff that you're supposed to do. Just click a button. Click lots of buttons. Make sure you like us, you share, and you subscribe, and you review. And Nico says,
Goo
goo goo gaga. So make sure you goo goo gaga us too. All right. Bye.